So what's the state of the Biden impeachment inquiry? We're going to be asking Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, who joins us now, chair of the House Judiciary Committee. But Congressman, first, it is 9/11, and I have to ask about the president not being at any of the attack sites for the 9/11 memorial. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, it's his call, but I mean, I don't, frankly, I don't understand it. You would think the commander-in-chief for something that was this tragic that happened to our country would be there. But I choose to focus today, I'm sure as you do, David, on the brave people who responded in that moment, the firemen, the police officers, the first responders, and, of course, the families who lost loved ones that day, both the people responding and the folks who were in the building doing their work. And, of course, we don't want to forget the men and women who wear who serve in our military, who've given so much over the years to deal with these terrorist threats. So I choose to focus on that. But, yeah, you would think the president would be there, but, it's his call.
I came back from work on 9/11, and my wife had to pick up my daughter at her school. She was about 9 years old at the time. We came home.
Yeah.
The emotions came out, and my son had just joined the Marine Corps 2 years earlier, and we asked our daughter what the problem was, and she said, "I don't want to be an only child." She knew. She knew at that young age that he was going to be going to war, which indeed he did, and as were tens of thousands of Americans. And I think it's so recent, and it is so many Americans were vested in this whole conflict. I just think it's a terrible oversight on the president's part.
Well,
go ahead.
Certainly, that's so personal for you, but with your son serving our country. But it's one of those moments where we all remember where we were. I remember I just got elected to the state Senate a few months before that and was driving to Columbus, Ohio, to the State House when my wife Polly called me, and I'm like, oh, my goodness, what's going on? So, yeah, it's one of those huge moments in our nation's history where I remember my parents talking about when President Kennedy was assassinated. My mom and dad said you remembered exactly where you were when you heard the news, and this was one of those tragic moments in our country's history. All
right, let's get to the Biden impeachment inquiry, or to the various investigations that might lead to an inquiry. I got a very simple question to start with. With all that you've gathered so far, not only you, but the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, et cetera, is there more evidence now for a Biden impeachment inquiry than there was for the Trump impeachment inquiry, his first impeachment inquiry?
Of course. 10% for the big guy, 50% for dad. I mean, you just keep 170, what is it now? Suspicious activity reports, 20 companies, multiple Bidens getting paid, dinners, phone calls, meetings. I mean, you can just keep going. The big meeting that took place in Dubai where Devin Archer, who testified in front of our committee and said the brand was Joe Biden, that was the Biden brand. Devin Archer and Hunter Biden are in Dubai meeting with the executives from Burisma. There's a call made to D.C. Devin Archer says, I don't know who it was. I had stepped away for a few minutes, but they called D.C. The call was to take the pressure off Burisma. 5 days later, December 9th, 2015, then Vice President Biden goes to Ukraine and starts putting the pressure on Mr. Shokin, the prosecutor, to take the pressure off of Burisma. So those are just some of the facts that jump in my mind right now. There's many more, and they just keep piling up. And that's why the speaker has been clear, David. If we need to go to an impeachment inquiry phase of this, and of course the distinction there is once you do that, the courts have long recognized that if you do that, there's a formal vote of the House of Representatives, a majority vote on a resolution, then this is a fundamental objective, fundamental task only that the House has, the impeachment whole issue. It's a constitutional task that the House has. And if there's this inevitable conflict between the Congress and the executive branch on getting information and getting people in for depositions, the courts tend to side with us because we're exercising what could be a constitutional duty. That's singular to the House of Representatives. So that's the reason you do it if the facts and evidence point us there. And it sure looks like that's where the facts and evidence are taken.
Well, let's go back further than just the Trump impeachment. Let's go back to the Nixon inquiry. It really wasn't begun. He resigned before it got to that stage. But the fact is that a lot of the evidence against Nixon involved obstruction of justice. It wasn't necessarily the bigger issue than the crime was the cover-up. And what we are now learning about what David Weiss did in terms from the IRS whistleblowers and others in terms of warding people off from drawing that link between Hunter Biden's business and Joe Biden. Is that an aspect of the inquiry that needs to be taken too? Will obstruction of justice, if there is an inquiry, be part of that investigation as well?
We certainly have to look into this David Weiss situation. David Weiss, who ran a 4.5-year investigation where they tipped off the defense counsel when they were looking to do a search warrant, where they told the transition team that they were interested in interviewing Hunter Biden, where they did all these things that the whistleblowers have come and told us, where David Weiss told us three different things this summer in 2 letters to the Judiciary Committee, and then a 3rd letter to Senator Graham, and said 3 different things in a matter of 33 days. That David Weiss, who presided over all that, put together the sweetheart deal that the judge declined to accept. That's the guy who the U.S. attorney, or excuse me, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, that's the guy who they make special counsel. Of course we have to look into that, because here's a special counsel who it looks like is designed to protect President Biden. Meanwhile, you got Jack Smith, who's attacking President Trump.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem that I think anyone with common sense can see.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you looking into whether or not Jack Smith, the special counsel looking into Trump, actually threatened a Trump defense lawyer? What's the detail of that?
Yeah, Mr. Woodward, who was called to the Department of Justice, Jay Brad, who works for Jack Smith, raised the issue about a potential judgeship that Mr. Woodward was interested in, brought that up in the context of questioning Mr. Woodward about his client who worked for President Trump, who they wanted to, I think, cooperate with them. I mean, Mr. Woodward files a complaint about this. So that all happens in this broader context of this is the special counsel's team. It is truly scary. And then when you step back, David, and look at the bigger picture, the escalation of it, never forget the pattern. They spied on the presidential campaign, not Jim Jordan saying that Bill Barr said that. Then they had the Mueller investigation, which was bogus and baloney. Again, not Jim Jordan saying that. That's what John Durham said. Then it was impeachment 1, then impeachment 2. Then it was naming a special counsel. Then it was for a Congress. Then it was now they're talking the 14th Amendment. And then we learned last week that they were actually contemplating in Georgia. Fonnie Willis was actually contemplating bringing an indictment against 3 United States senators. One of them was the top Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is how crazy it's gotten. And then you compare all that pattern with what David Weiss has been up to the last 4.5 years. And that's where Americans say, wow, there are 2 standards here.
Congressman, we got to run, but I have to ask a question. When will the inquiry begin?
I think the facts and the evidence are pointing us to that in a pretty, I think, rapid way. We'll have to see. The speaker's been clear. We're going to be driven by the Constitution, the facts, and the evidence. But I think that they're beginning to pile up, and I think that's where we should probably move. But that's a question for the whole conference, and we just get back tomorrow. So I'm sure we're going to have that discussion.
Are we talking days, weeks, months?
I think it's relatively soon. I don't know, because we got to get the conference back. We've been going for now several weeks, so we'll get them back together and we'll have that discussion.
Jim Jordan, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.